Yes, we are. Then we can call the meeting to order at 11:01 p.m. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
All right. So let me first start by saying that Joe is not with us. Joe Carvalho, our co-chair. Um, since our last meeting, Joe was actually called upon by our Lieutenant Governor Biswix, and he accepted a well-deserved promotion to be her senior policy advisor. And so we want to congratulate Joe, and we are proud of Joe, and we wish him well. So once we have a new co-chair, we will announce that. So that's to be determined when that is confirmed. Okay, so Kevin will be with us, and obviously we will hold down the fort until that happens. And my name is Princess Russell Reynario, DDS case manager, and be co-chair for our committee. And we'll move on to discuss the agenda. And I guess this morning we'll start out with Peter giving his update on just some context as to what's been going on with our sister committees. So I'll turn it over to you, Peter.
Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Hope everyone's doing well. Let me just start. We have been working through what we've called phase one. Phase one for the Moving On initiative are agencies that are willing to start now before our consultant Deloitte, who's at this point been reviewing our current system, has been doing stakeholder groups, has been looking at other states, comes back with additional recommendations for how to move the system forward. The phase one, we right now have 25 agencies that have submitted that they were interested in phase one. Of those 25, 11 agencies said they are going to submit a transition plan. The other agencies are not sure. They're interested, but they're not sure. So right now we're contacting all those that have said that they were interested to see what we can do to assist them. So how this kind of breaks down is that there are 9 agencies that submitted the survey that they were interested from the north, 11 from the south, and 3 from the west. There's 2 others that came through that I'm not too sure what regions they're in. And they are looking at doing residential changes. There's some that's looking at doing just day changes, and there's some that looking at doing both day and res. And there's one agency that submitted that they were going to look at restructuring their whole agency. So we'll be working through a number of plans. And as we go through that, hopefully that will help us guide us in terms of helping us with the transition plans to see, did we miss anything? Are there things that we need to adjust in terms of the actual transition plan documents? And this is all leading now to phase 2, and we're our consultant, Deloitte Consulting, is now in the process of preparing or working through the analysis. They've done the state analysis. They did an analysis of 5 different states. It was Arkansas, Maine, Missouri, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. And when they did the preliminary review, what they found is that for the most part, DDS in the state of Connecticut is at the top, if not the top in a number of creative things that are being done in the country. And so what we we're able to then is to focus Deloitte on those states that were doing certain initiatives that we may be able to create or duplicate for what they're doing. So, well, I just got a copy of the state, the draft. So myself, Greg McMahon, and Keith Lavalette, who's part of the ARPA initiative team, will be doing a review of that and then sharing it with other DDS folks. Our goal is to hopefully have that published or sent out or be available sometime towards the end of next week. Let's see if we can get to that goal. They've also looked at, they're doing right now individual and family surveys. As of yesterday, they had, if I remember, 800 surveys that were submitted and by mail. And then there were an additional 80 that were submitted by electronically. So we're looking to see where people are at and what their thinking is and what their thoughts are and what we need to do to assist them as we move forward. One of the things that we we sent this out. There were 9,200, I believe, that was sent out, and it was only to those in a congregate setting. Because we're trying to work through our initiative with the federal government was reducing the number of individuals in a congregate setting. So that's why we sent those surveys out to them. We sent it to the legally responsible person, and case managers were sent a copy, as well as providers to help assist in terms of answering the questions and getting it back to it. We've also done input sessions, and what we've seen are there's some themes that workforce crisis, having enough staff to do this comes up just about at every one of our meetings. Communication is another piece of it. The training of case managers is another one. And that how do we explain what the menu of options are? So they're looking at that. And I want to show you in particular one of the surveys that came through. And it just happened yesterday, I believe. Yes, or the 19th, all right, last week. So I'm going to share my screen. So hold on. Let's see. Let me know if everybody can see this.
Yep.
Yes.
So this was with DDS staff. Since this is our committee, is the engagement committee for DDS staff, I thought this would be interesting for people to see. There were, I believe, like 32 people who were on the, were part of the feedback session. And once again, the highlights is they underscored staffing and transportation as the biggest challenges. That's not something new. We all know that. They talked about, they reiterated about communication and interagency coordination, in particular with BRS, Bureau of Rehab Services. So for those that don't know, when an individual graduates from school, they are then assessed by BRS in terms of employability. And if they are employable, BRS will then work with the individual, the family, in terms of looking for competitive integrated employment. And if they're not, then they go to DDS. So DDS has been working more closely with BRS to how do we determine what employability is, and In years past, BRS took a much stricter interpretation. So we've been working with them to try to expand their horizon on who they consider is employable. But one of the things that the case managers talked about was they don't know if an individual did work with BRS and then BRS wasn't able to find a job for them, that it would be helpful if they could have ideas as to what they tried already, where they've been, what they've done in the past in terms of helping them move forward. So I thought that was a good good feedback. The other thing that they talked about, and hopefully we can figure out maybe ways of doing this, but many case managers noted that it's challenging keeping track of all the new services. And one of the things that they really suggested was restarting a regional case manager meeting or creating opportunities for peer mentorship, where one case manager in one particular region will say, this is what we're doing, this is how we've worked with that, to try to to foster a peer learning environment. So case managers can hear from other case managers, especially during this moving on transition. So maybe that's something we can discuss. The staff say it's difficult to access updated information on the website. They're looking at how do they get this updated information? Can there be some frequently asked questions that we could put up that would be able to share with case managers? They noted interest in having more available information on accessing assistive technology and other options. They talked about the uncertainty and fear can be an obstacle. They were suggesting site visits before a transition, leveraging self-advocate coordinators or other peers to help. And then they reiterated the importance of building relationships with employers. And there was one that suggested that maybe there could be some kind of a registry of employers who have worked in the past and how they, that they're more friendly and more cooperative than other employers, so that people know, that they can places that may be in their area that they could approach. So that was some of the feedback from that session, and I thought that was pretty helpful for us. I'm gonna finish I'll get questions at the end, so let me just go through all my stuff so I can move forward. So some of the things that we're also doing is we're looking at establishing 7 videos of different supports, being supportive housing, assistive technology, remote supports, community companion homes, customized employment. And so what we've done we've identified some agencies that do well in these different areas. We have a production company that's now going to contact them and work with individuals in each particular setting, so that we'll be able to have individuals who are in these settings on video, so that people can see what actually it's like, and to give like an idea for people. So I think that's going to be very helpful. And then just some of the other things that are happening out there is individuals who self-direct their resources. We've had a really outdated website to match potential employers with potential staff. We contracted with Rewarding Work, who are in the process of redesigning their website. And it's estimated that that will begin on March 1st. Individuals who are part of that now will not have to won't have to sign up again. They'll just be transferred over to it. We posted additional assistive technology grants for individuals and for providers. Those are mostly for residential. So we'll also be looking at setting up a new grant opportunity for day programs, which we expect to send out shortly. We're in the process of finishing off our a grant request for developing supportive housing sites in non-project based settings. So how we've done it in up till now is we've worked from the ground up. So we worked with a developer. The developers then worked with the provider. They've set up the supports. They've then gone to the Department of Housing for tax credits, and then they built the setting from the ground up. This has been very successful, but these take usually 2 to 3 years to build. And so what we're looking at in this particular grant to see if we can look at existing apartment complexes, if we can work through those existing apartment complex owners to set up supportive housing sites. So we're not too sure if that can happen, but that's why we're trying to do this grant. That would then, if we could do that, then we don't have to wait the 2-3 years to get this up and running. We can work through the developer that already has a site that can be used. Let me see. We have been working through an issue with rent subsidy and trying to develop to enhance our rent subsidy program to allow individuals additional dollars so that when they move from a group home to rent subsidy, up until now, there's been a real drop off in disposable income for individuals. A lot of it's been taken up by the rent. So we're trying to make this a little bit more generous so that individuals will be able to do a lot of the stuff that they were doing in a group home within the apartment setting. And I think that's what we have to now. So if anybody has any questions, fire away. Yana?
So hi, this is Yana. I'm a self-advocate coordinator. You were talking about that registry with the employers. That's something that I brought up to when I was working with VRS about 20 years ago. We brought it up, and VRS gave me their line was, "Oh, that's not something we can do. It's not possible." But we did talk about it, and the whole transportation thing. I've been hearing a lot of issues from individuals. One family in particular, their son is one of his goals is learning how to use public transportation, and his transition program just moved to it's a wonderful location, but it's not accessible by public transit, and now they're having a lot of issues with him getting there. So I think, and this is not the first time. I don't drive myself, so I've run into this problem a lot where providers I've had to go to are not accessible to me because they're not on a bus line. I think that it's not acceptable. These providers, if they're serving people with disabilities who may not drive, they have to be accessible by public transit. They have to be
Yeah.
transit oriented.
Yeah,
Our-
thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I know we've been working on trying to figure out what we can do for transportation. One of the things that we've done on a small basis, but we're looking to see if there's a way to expand that in terms of using Uber or Lyft for individuals, because especially those that are outside of the normal transportation, public transportation a piece. And so we've been looking at that. We're also looking at, and we're just in the beginning stages of looking at a software program that we would try to look at seeing where, if we can input all routes that providers do now So if an individual wants to go from X to Z, is there a provider in that area that goes to this way that the person could tag along? So we're just now trying to see what that would look like, and is that something that would be beneficial? So transportation's hasn't always, it's always going to be an issue. We just have to figure out how we can minimize it as much as possible.
Actually, when we had a meeting with the commissioner a while ago, I actually brought up the idea of our individuals using Uber and Lyft, and he said he had concerns about the safety. And I think too that we
Yeah,
have to,
that's
the safety thing. I teach
yeah.
my individuals how to be safe, but that it is definitely a safety thing. And Uber and Lyft eat up a lot of money.
No, they do, and we're trying. That's why we're trying to work through how do we, if it's possible, how would we be able to do that in a safe manner? It's, as I said, there's no one solution. So some people may be able to use that, other people may not. So we're trying to figure out all the different avenues that we could take to help minimize the transportation part of it.
We appreciate you bringing that up, Yana, especially. It really was a huge topic during the conversation with the commissioner and deputy commissioner as well. So that's definitely something that's on the table at the top of the list for transportation. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I think transit-oriented development is going to be the way to go for these providers to have them. One of, I think it needs to be one of the requirements to be DDS provider. Your office has to be transit-oriented because we serve individuals who don't drive.
Mhm.
And even with something like ADA paratransit, it has to be on a bus line. It has to run parallel to the current public transportation. So I think we have to really push it because we want individuals to be as independent as possible, and two, transit oriented development is the way to go. That's my focus area, by the way, as a self advocate coordinator, is transportation. If you didn't know.
Thank you so much. Um, we have Dawn up, then Marina, and then Wayne. And then if no one has any other questions, we want to make sure that McDowell is able to present. And we also have Trevor that will be presenting for us about the employment initiative. All right, so let's, Dawn.
Hi, Dawn DiMatteo, parent. A few things in the stakeholders input session with the case managers. I have to add that from a parent's perspective, we do find that different case managers have different information. Some have more, some have less. Personally, I feel like I was lucky in getting case managers for my son that really knew the system and knew programs, which obviously is beneficial, but that's not the case for all parents. So I think one of the biggest areas for DDS with communication is really getting a program together for those case managers. Maybe, I mean, from my perspective on my business end, we have an account executive meeting once a month where all our account executives are on the phone sharing ideas, sharing things that we've come up against. You may want to think about something like that, but they're really your front line individuals. And I think they have to know what's going on and be on the same page across the board so that all families are getting the same message. Even with the moving on program, if it was me, I'm involved, so I understand. But if it was me receiving that letter on behalf of my son, the first thing I would do was call my case manager and say, what is this? What am I doing? And want all the details. And I have a feeling if some parents are doing that, the case managers are not familiar with the details of the program. So I
Yeah,
think that's one, you know, Peter, that's one big piece. They're your frontline people.
Yeah, this is Peter Mason, and one of the reasons for doing that survey and was to start a baseline of what people know now. And so that same survey is going to go out again a year from now. And because we're trying to look at outcomes and stuff. So have we succeeded in communicating over this time period to get more people to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and all that stuff. So this first one was a little, out of left field. We have been sending some stuff out, not a whole lot. So it was more to say, okay, this is where we're starting at.
Yeah.
And see next year, hopefully we're going to get that come back. It will be much more, a much more informed stakeholder group. If it doesn't, then we failed. So that's why we're trying to, that's why that came
Yeah.
about like that.
And this is Dawn DiMatteo, and that circles me back with what I've been going through with back and forth with Princesses. I did hear from some parents who were on those stakeholder meetings with Deloitte. And a lot of the parents, unless you're really involved and you're seeing the same faces, obviously, even as a parent advocate trying to get other parents, and it's very difficult. But those parents that are not familiar, that did jump on there, were looking at those meetings as if they're informational meetings on what DDS is offering. So I think there was some confusion with that piece. Questioning, well, my child has this, what are you offering? What's going on? And that really wasn't the purpose of those
Right.
meetings. So I'm a little concerned on what Deloitte might be gathering and reporting back on. Hopefully they're reporting back on the lack of communication. I mean, I'm not being offensive, but hopefully that's the piece that'll get back, is that we need more communication, and the same communication to case managers that then float down to our clients, your clients.
No, and the themes about communication was definitely part of the theme. There was the communication of the workforce. We're seeing that, and that's why we are trying to figure out how to address that and get it out to everybody. So
yeah. And then just one last comment, and I don't know if you can release this information, but you did mention that 11 providers submitted a plan. Can we find out who those providers are? Or is that confidential?
It's not confidential, but probably not until we see they actually have a plan.
Okay.
I think when there's a plan, then we'll be able to say, these are the providers of the plan, because right now they're still talking about it.
Okay.
And I wouldn't feel comfortable jumping the gun.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, this is Kevin Bronson at DDS. I just want to jump in to Dawn's comment earlier. I guess my question, because I think that's the point of these these sessions or these committees, right, is that we talk about that DDS, and I agree with a lot of everything that what everyone's talking about, right, is DDS is not communicating and not communicate, there's issues with communication and stuff. But I guess my question would be, what are we looking to communicate to them? Right. Well, like, what do you think that they need to be communicated? Right. I understand we were talking about there's, case managers. Some are better than others. Some have more information than others. But currently, we're at the process where there isn't really, I could argue that there's really not a whole lot of information to provide to case managers. In maybe 2 weeks' time, there will be. But currently, so I guess my question is what are we missing? Like, what should we be doing? Because for me, I personally I think that we're close to being, I think that I'm not saying that we have the best communication and we have the best website and whatever, but I think with the amount of information that we provided them, I think we're at a good point now personally, but I could be wrong. So so I guess Dawn or others, I don't mean to take up the conversation, but I'm
Well,
curious
I can speak to, I mean, Peter talked, his update, your update, Peter, this is Princess, by the way, DDS. Your update, Peter, was very, very thorough, and you really covered a lot of bases, you know, that we were going to be talking about as far as the stakeholder communication that's gone on over the last couple of weeks, which has been quite a bit of communication, I think. As far as what is actually going on right now, to Kevin's point, I participated in several of the innovative forums, the sessions with where the commissioner and deputy commissioner hosted, and they were able to engage with DDS staff and have a dialogue and really listen to some of the feedback, the concerns and issues that Peter spoke to. So he really gave a great update on that. But just to speak to kind of where case managers are with that, they seem to be pretty informed up to the point. The commissioner and deputy commissioner was able to give a good framework of ARPA, give an update as to what has transpired, much like Peter did to folks, and following that was able to get some feedback as to, you know, how to move forward, kind of what kinds of things need to be addressed to support folks and sustain situations for people who are going to be involved in the transformation. So my feedback is I feel like case managers are in a good place, but to speak to what with ARPA information as they're being informed right now, and as Kevin is saying, and Peter is saying, we're coming into phase 1 and coming into phase 2. So as we get that, the information updates, we share that through our commissioner messages or through Kevin's messages from communications and such, so they are informed. But to Dawn's point, I think that there is definitely a degree of you know, information that you get from some case managers versus others, and I think some of that has to do with that case managers are new. We have a lot of new case managers too as well, so we're working through that as well and getting trainings going and stuff like that. But that as far as it pertains to ARPA though, I feel like the case managers, we're receiving this information now at the same time. So it's been going well as far as the case manager's feedback to the commissioner and deputy commissioner in those forums and the questions that they've been asking. So I don't know what your thoughts were, Peter, on that, but that's what I kind of pulled from it.
Yeah, so this is Peter Mason, and I think the issue is that if you're a parent and you really want to find out the information, you'll be able to find the information. But if you're a parent who has so much other stuff going on and you don't have time to do all the research and stuff, you're going to be hanging out there. And so we need to figure out how we can almost saturate, you know, this is what we're doing, these are the supports, and just keep hammering home what these supports are and why we're doing this. I find, you know, that there's been a lot of times where the parents have struggled to a point to finally get DDS resources, and in some cases moving into the group home is where they've been trying to go to. That once they do that, they then kind of take a breather and think that everything's going to be great from there on in, and you know, I think we need to try to keep making sure that people there, that, you know, the group home is one option. There's tons of other options, and individuals change, and individuals can, you know, thrive in other settings and stuff. And I think we have to figure out how to keep doing that. And as I said, I think with the information's there if you have the time and the will to do it. But if not, we need to figure out how to keep reaching everybody and saying this is what we're doing.
So Peter, Kevin Bronson, I just want to mention that we're focusing on DDS staff, the DDS staff engagement, not obviously individual and family. Right. So yep. I just want to make sure right. that because I understand that there's issues with communicate. Like again, I said there's issues with communications outside of ARPA, right? But if we're here, we're specifically focusing on ARPA, and I want to make sure
point.
that
Yep.
if going into the next couple weeks, that if we feel that there is something that the case managers or DDS staff specifically need to know, and I'll leave it at this because I know there's a bunch of hands up. I just want to make sure that that information is brought up here or even gets passed along to our consultants or whoever, because we can't put something out and then check it, right? We have to think
Yep.
forward about all of this. So that's
Good
all.
point.
Thank you, Don, so much. We can move on to, I think Marina is next, and then Wayne as well, real quick.
A Marina Derman parent. So yeah, I'm gonna I actually had two things, but I'll echo Don too. I think you guys need to be aware that as much as you are pushing the information out, your case managers are not always, and I won't say that, you know, Kevin, this is a short-term issue in terms of the ARPA push, but having been through this for years and years and years in the same trenches Don is, case managers are inconsistent in their dedication to knowing every single thing that's going on. And so some are much more on the ball than others. And so I think that is not an issue. So I would definitely be paying attention to that. Anyway, my two things were, first, I just wanted to, you know, note that in the documents in the agenda that were sent out, I know I was looking at the DDS main ARPA page as compared to the specific components page. And I would say, you know, the DDS main ARPA page, man, that is a bear. You know, that is not how I would want to communicate with families. It is so opaque and full of acronyms, and that is not a family-friendly page. And so I would encourage everyone to look at it and imagine yourself as a parent. It just reminded me of that Far Side cartoon of the dog listening to the human, and it just says wah, 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 you know, Fido, wah, 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 wah. So I'm wondering if that could be rewritten. I mean, the other document underneath it, the other page under it, is far better at saying, oh, I could read that and understand what it means, the offerings are. But the main page is like, what does that even mean? So anyway, if in terms of communicating well to families, I don't think that one, that just was really challenging, I thought. My second point, I wanted to react a bit to one of the pieces that Peter mentioned in terms of employment and the employer's resistance to hiring people with disabilities is such a true, barrier. In where I used to live in Westport and recently left there, and there we had an initiative that came out of our Department of Human Services and our that was chaired and with our Commission on People with Disabilities. So Westport has some great businesses that were formed just for disability employment, but we also said, hey, let's do a full court press with the idea of that every business in town should be hiring somebody with disabilities. And we called it Employment is for Everyone. And as we, went door to door talking to everyone saying, come on, let's not hire, everyone should have some disability employment, whether it's, the CVS or the convenience store or, the bookshop down the street. And we did hear that fear of the unknown, and the people who are really honest saying, look, I just don't know. I don't know if that's going to be hard. I don't know if there's going to be liability. I don't know how to train people that are different. I don't know if it's going to be strange for my customers. I just don't know what I don't know. And we came to the same conclusion of taking the managers who had done a good job and were used to hiring people with disabilities and using them as our ambassadors. So anyway, I think this Employment is for Everyone initiative, which is really up and running, could be a model for the rest of the state. And I encourage maybe some communication, and maybe we can use this and propagate it elsewhere across Connecticut. So happy to put people in touch if that's of interest. I'm done.
Thank you. This is Peter Mason. Thank you. I'm glad Trevor's on here because he can help us with that.
We just have Wayne real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, thank you. I won't take much time because I know we're on an agenda here. I just wanted to actually first thank all of the comments that have come in. So Dawn, Marina, it's really good to hear that feedback. That's really important to this committee. It's the role of this committee to address concerns that come in regarding communication of ARPA initiatives, come up with new ideas, talk about the best ways to do it. And so we need to evaluate constantly. So that feedback is super valuable. I agree also with some of the comments from Princess and Kevin. There have been some great efforts, a few different ways to get information out. And I think we don't just stop and rest on those ways. I think it's really important to have this information being fed to, and we're focusing on case managers here, but it's resource managers. It's really the whole gamut of staff here at DDS that have some way to touch these initiatives. And we just have to keep coming up with the ways that are working, and also think about a few other ways as well. So for an example, from the input sessions, interesting to hear about the regional discussions being revised. And all along, I've been thinking about that as well. How do we have smaller discussions about what ARPA means? In addition to everything else that we're doing, but to ensure that there are opportunities to ask questions, to continue to push information. I've heard Peter provide some updates in multiple venues, and each time I learned something new that I didn't know before. I don't know that everybody's having those opportunities to hear those updates from Peter. So I'm wondering if there are ways that we can have regional updates and opportunities, and perhaps even champions, so to speak, in the regions that will have the answers to these questions and be able to communicate. So it's thoughts and ideas like that I think are one of the main missions of this group here, all of us to try to think about and put into action. So thank you.
This is Peter Mason. Wayne, I think I also, when I saw that about the regional meetings, the peer-to-peer, I think that's probably a great avenue. And if there's anything, my team can do to assist, we're definitely, willing to do that. I think the case manager has, it's not an easy job they have. They have to, they have to know a whole lot of stuff in order for the variety of people that they support. And, their caseload is pretty large, and so I just know that sometimes I do projects around the house, and sometimes, I'll do a project, I'll research it, get it all done, and then I won't see that project for like 2-3 years later. And then it's like I'm starting all over again. It's like, okay, now how did I do that? What did I use and stuff? And I'm sure that's probably the same that happens with the case manager. It's like, yeah, I've seen that, but I don't see it every day. So now I have to go back and figure that out. So I think, they have a tough role. And, I think that's where, how we set up these forums or these gatherings that we can just keep, keep that information. So even if you're not doing it right now, you can start hearing about what people are doing. And so that when they do hear it, or it does come to them, they'll be better informed and have an idea of what to do. So whatever we can do, we're willing to help.
That's great. I appreciate that. I mean, we're at the beginning. I think we're at the beginning of this effort. I think the survey caused some questions, right? And perhaps people weren't feeling prepared to answer those questions. And it sounds like some of that was by intent to really, but I don't think everybody knew that. And so if we can just continue to have a drip from many different directions, it's true. A case manager might be working on a house project, but then their garage is on fire and they got to put that out. And so the house project takes a secondary. And I know that's why it's important to have multiple modes of information to keep people updated and everything else. So let's keep those ideas coming, and let's think about the best ways to make that communication effective and useful.
Thank you so much. And I don't want to cut the conversation. This is really important, invaluable information that we're getting. And again, this is the point of the committee too, as well, is to bring that information back and work on those things. So we definitely appreciate it. And certainly feel free to send your comments and questions and any feedback as well to me following the meeting as well, so that I have the opportunity to bring that in context to the folks that, it needs to get to, so that we can make sure that we're doing the work to make those improvements and further those efforts there. But I wanted to turn it over to Trevor Rogers, who's here, and I apologize, Trevor, in all the great conversation and us trying to peel back some of the stuff that's going on. We kind of delayed you a little bit in presenting the employment initiative. So if you don't mind, we'll turn it over to you now if you're prepared.
I am. Thank you, Princess, and sorry for moving around the agenda. We have someone in our unit who is sick this week, so we have to cover a few different things that weren't originally planned. But I'm here to talk about the one-time employment incentives, and I actually was going to present in December, but I had to reschedule because of a death in the family. So I'm here today, and there are a lot of great changes, and so I'll just dive right in. I probably should have started following the public meeting ARPA trends of, I'm Trevor Rogers. I am a DDS transition advisor, and I work in the Employment and Day Services division. And just a little bit of an update is the reason that I am here is because there were a lot of operational changes with our one-time employment incentives. And so we've been doing a lot to get all of that information out there and to do some internal and external training. So what are DDS one-time employment incentives? Our DDS one-time employment incentives are non-annualized funds, which means that they do not affect the individual's annual budget. The purpose of one-time employment incentives are to assist individuals in transitioning to, retaining, or sustaining competitive integrated employment. And the one-time employment incentives are accessible to individuals in multiple services, including individualized day vocational, our different group day options, including employment transition services, group supported employment services, and individual supported employment ISE services. So before I start, one thing I will say is a lot of these changes were made before our rates were updated. So but I have included our updated rates in this section, just in case you're wondering why the dates don't coincide with the new rates. But as of October 1st, 2022, there is one uniform rate for our ISE employment incentives, and that rate is $66.76 an hour. And this is for individuals in IDV, ISE, a combination of ISE and group day, or just ISE by itself. This change simplified the rate system that was in place previously for individuals in a group day program to $81.25 an hour. The incentive rate is no longer correlated with the LON score of the individual. And just some background on that, since we changed from per diem group day services in 2020, providers doing group supported employment and utilizing these ISE employment incentive hours could receive payment for the LON rate plus the group day ISE rate through the incentive payments. And the purpose of this was to ensure providers could maintain their group day funding ratios while pulling individuals out of their program to try and to use the one-time employment incentives to transition an individual to an ISE employment placement. So to simplify this process, the average payment based on LON was calculated and the rate was simplified to one regular rate. And then that rate did increase actually as of January 1st when we updated all of our service rates. So regardless of the individual's LON score, if they're in a group day placement, that is the funding that is available. And then also as of October 1st, 2022, whenever possible, one-time ISE authorizations will utilize add hours, which allows for WebRes Day billing in lieu of submitting actuals. And this is a decrease in the administrative burden that previously existed for provider staff and DDS staff when submitting the different deliverables for our one-time employment incentives. Additional operational changes are effective December 1st, 2022. Providers can apply for an additional 1-year benchmark payment. If an individual started their employment opportunity in December of 2021, they can now access as of December 1st, 2022, the new 1-year benchmark payment, which is December 2022 would be their 1 year of employment. So payment deliverables for benchmark payments have also been simplified to alleviate some of the burden that was placed on providers. Providers no longer need to submit every single pay stub to receive payment for the benchmarks, and instead, a new year-to-date pay stub must be submitted for each benchmark payment. Additionally, the final pay stub of a calendar year must be submitted if a benchmark crosses the calendar year, just to ensure that hours can be calculated correctly. And pay stubs are collected to calculate the prorated rate that is based on the average amount of hours worked by individuals per week. As always, the benchmark payments are only accessible to individuals who have transitioned to an individual supported employment ISE position or to natural supports. And this is in line with the goal of the incentives, which is to help individuals transition to competitive integrated employment. So on the screen now is the process to request funding for providers who are contract providers and those who are individual budget providers. This process has not changed since we initiated the process, and it's on the screen just to ensure that the process is clear and easily available to all the different provider agencies who are contractors or who are on budget. And it is important to note that case managers should be aware of and support the one-time request, regardless of whether or not a provider agency is a contract or a budget provider. So quickly, I'm going to go in to a little bit of what the pieces of our one-time employment incentives are. And one of them is our career plan. Funding for the development of the career plan comes in 2 different forms. Providers are allowed to bill for up to 10 hours of direct face-to-face service at the new $81.25 an hour rate for group day and $68.76 dollars per hour rate for all other placements. And funding is also provided in the form of a one-time payment for the completed career plan, and that is $980.96. Career plan funds are to be used to provide opportunities for people to explore their work preferences, develop interview skills, learn about other employment opportunities, and have site work experiences and working interviews in the community while they continue their current program. It's also important to note that a career plan does not need to be completed in every case when the one-time employment incentives are used, especially if an individual has already identified employment sectors of interest. Linked on the screen also are some resources on our DDS website, including a career plan template and a career plan guide. The next piece of our one-time employment incentives is the working interview incentive, which provides funding that can be used to pay an individual while working in a position that has a strong likelihood of leading to a job offer. Funds are also available to cover staff hours, and individuals' wages during an interview can also be reimbursed up to 40 hours. Staff hours can be reimbursed during the working interview for up to 40 hours as well at the new rates, at the 81.25 for group day and the 68.76 for other placements. And it's important to note that for this piece, as well as the career plan piece, the different hourly determinants can now be, the deliverables will be submitted through WebRes Day. One of the last pieces is the intensive job placement and training piece, and these funds are used to provide additional hours of on-the-job training and support to promote a successful transition to employment. The funding is the same as our other incentives. The rate is $81.25 for individuals in group day and $68.76 for other placements. As always, the benchmark payments that are provided through our one-time employment incentives are only accessible to individuals who have transitioned to an individual supported employment ISE position or natural supports. And this is in line with the goal of our incentives, helping individuals transition to employment. There are now 5 benchmark payments accessible to provider agencies, and previously there was just our Job Start benchmark, our 3-month, our 6-month, and then a transition to natural supports benchmark. But as I said earlier, effective 12/1/2022, providers can apply for an additional 1-year benchmark. And all benchmark payments are up to $2,000. You might have heard me say that they're prorated a little bit earlier. And what that means is that the payments are calculated based on the average weekly number of hours worked by the individual. If an individual works an average of 25 hours a week, then the provider can access the entire $2,000 sum. If the individual works less than 25 hours, the payment is prorated or adjusted based on the actual number of hours worked by the individual the average amount of hours worked by the individual per week. And this calculation is the reason why pay stubs are a deliverable for these one-time incentive benchmark payments. And just as a reminder, for our new 1-year benchmark, and for all of our other benchmarks, now we have the completed simplified deliverables. So you only need to submit the pay stub at the time of the benchmark. And then as a reminder, you do need to submit the end of the year, calendar year pay stub if a benchmark crosses the calendar year, so that year-to-date totals can be used to calculate the averages. One other piece of our one-time employment funding is our employment training incentive funding, which was created to provide opportunities for providers to enhance employment training for their staff, such as job development, job coaching, business entrepreneurship, asset management, and benefits planning. And to request this funding, there's a traditional attachment A, which I have linked on the screen here, and I can send a copy of this PowerPoint so that it can be distributed to the group. And funds for the employment training incentive can be used to cover the actual costs of participant registration for employment training sessions, and the annual cap for this is determined on a case-by-case basis annually. And reimbursement for replacement staff may also be covered based on the cost of the substitute, and these must go through the one-time employment procedure as well. So on the screen right now is just a simplified graphic of all of our rates in the updates that have occurred at the end of the calendar year 2022. To reiterate, there's now one unified rate of $68.76 per hour for all of our all of the one-time employment incentives, except for individuals who are in Group Day. Providers can now access a payment of $81.25 per hour for individuals in Group Day, because the incentive and the payments for this is no longer correlated with an individual's LON score. And just to give a tiny bit of background on that, this rate, the funding mechanism here, we took the average amount paid for all of the LON payments, and we're able to figure out a payment amount that would make sure that providers were not losing when we made this simplification, and so that to make sure that there was no rate decrease when all of our rates were unified. And then finally, like I had said earlier, there is now a 1-year benchmark, which is accessible to providers, and all of the deliverables have been simplified in terms of the pay stub submissions, as well as the ability to use WebRes Day to submit for these payments instead of submitting actuals. I know that was a lot of information about our one-time employment incentives. I will make sure to send this PowerPoint, and it has links, and all the links will be active to Princess so that it can be distributed to anyone. But I did just want to quickly give anyone the chance to ask any questions that they might have.
Anybody have any questions real quick? It was very thorough, Trevor. We appreciate the update, and I guess we got it at a good time, because we got it when there were some changes made, and you were able to interpret it very well for us. So we appreciate you, and thanks for also ahead of time for sending the PowerPoint to us. We can take a look at it as well ourselves.
Thank you.
All right,
And
if
thank you
no-
for giving me the opportunity. I'm always available via email if there's ever any questions about it.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank
Have a
you.
good afternoon.
You too.
All right, folks. So moving right along, if no one has any questions on employment initiatives and incentives, we can we have McDowell here to discuss some updates around communication planning, which directly impacts our role as a committee. So we are excited to hear what's going on new and what we can expect. There's Maura.
Hi, everyone. This is Maura Fitzgerald. I'm from McDowell Communications Group, which is the outside firm helping out DDS with communications around the transformation plan. I was a little bit late getting on, so I know that Peter talked about a bunch of things that we're working on, so I apologize in advance if I say anything that's repetitive. I know that that you discussed the individual and family survey that went out. Just to update you, we heard back from the research firm that's collecting the surveys back, and they've already gotten back over 1,000 responses from individuals and families. So we're really happy with the response that we're getting from people. And people have until next Tuesday, I think the 31st, to return the surveys to us. So so we're hoping to have a good sample to have our benchmarks of where we started this process at. In that same vein, we are going to be sending out a survey similar to the individuals and families survey, but specifically for DDS employees. That's in the process of being formatted for it's going to be a completely online survey. And we will also have a QR code for DDS employees who don't have their own individual computers, so they can take a picture of the QR code and complete the survey from their phone or from their home computers when they have a chance. And in kind of keeping with what we heard last week at the Deloitte listening session with the DDS employees who expressed wanting more communications from the central office and whatnot, there's an email that will likely go out today from the deputy commissioner, that just giving employees a heads up that in the next couple of days they will be getting this survey, and explaining to the employees kind of the purpose of the survey, which, just like with the individuals and families survey, is more to establish a baseline of where DDS employees are right now with kind of how much they've heard about the transformation project and the moving on plan, and kind of what their initial thoughts are of the project. So again, so we get a baseline. We'll do the survey again at the end of the year, and that will help us to kind of judge how our communication efforts have been over the course of this next year. So that heads up should be going out today, and then hopefully the survey will be ready to go out. We're hoping Friday in the commissioner's Friday communication to employees. I think Peter also mentioned that we are working with a video production company to do a series of 7 videos on various topics, from assistive technology to self-direction. The videos will be kind of a combination of live demonstration where it's possible, and then kind of testimonials from individuals who are using these services and supports, their families, potentially staff, and kind of how, what kind of fears were going into using the technologies, how those fears were overcome, and kind of how the using technologies and supports have aided individuals and families and staff in living more independently. We're also working on putting together a newsletter that will go out to individuals and families, the DDS staff, providers, kind of all the stakeholders. And we're hoping to make this kind of an every other month newsletter that will update everyone on what's going on with the Moving On plan and the transformation project. So the first newsletter is going to be kind of a summary of what this committee and the other ARPA committees have been doing, starting since last summer. So it's going to be kind of just top lines of what each of the committees have done and what effect that, will have for individuals and families, employees, providers, et cetera, et cetera. We also, in response to what we heard last week on the Deloitte listening session, Princess and I have been talking about doing some more frequent employee communications. So we're going to be working on that. And then finally, well, actually 2 more things. I know that someone had mentioned that the ARPA page, the main ARPA page, is not very family friendly. We are looking at other states' ARPA pages to see, how they're communicating things. Is it more friendly, that sort of thing? And hopefully, down the line, we can kind of start to work on making that a little more family friendly on the website. But one of the other things that we want to start working on, which also came out of the Deloitte listening session, was putting together kind of individual success stories. And I know that that DDS has some of those success stories already on the employment side of things. We want to be able to do kind of short vignettes with individuals who are using DDS supports and who have been successful with them. And this is ultimately to help individuals and families kind of be able to see that these supports and services are possibilities for themselves. So seeing that someone else in a similar circumstance is succeeding in using these things, hopefully that will help them, realize or have a little more confidence that they too can use these technologies and these supports. But the kind of more immediate point of that is to help the caseworkers, to give them kind of resources. So when they're talking to their, the people that they're supporting, they can say, well, here, I think this support might be good for you. And, here's so-and-so who, in similar circumstances as you, and they've been able to use it. And here's a little story about that, so that we can help the caseworkers help their individuals, realize that these supports and these technologies are potential for them. So those are kind of the things that we're working on now. We're also working on putting together a master communications calendar that will have various components to it. So it'll have communications for individuals and families, communications for the DDS employees, and then communications for other stakeholders, which are kind of our main focuses, and Deloitte's focuses on the providers. So our focus is kind of on taking the work that Deloitte is doing and transforming that into what it means for the individuals and families, and what it means for DDS staff and other stakeholders. So those are the things that we're working on right now. And if you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them for you. So thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you, Maura. I just wanted to add a couple things. I know just to kind of expand on some of the things that you said, and I'm glad that it was brought up about the website, that it wasn't friendly, because that was one of the things that you and I talked about too, as well, as far as looking at other websites too, and kind of seeing what other states are doing. Peter touched on that too. So that's very much on the agenda of things for us to do. I wanted to also include that in those success stories that we were hoping to get pulled together was assistive technology. We wanted some success stories on how folks are using assistive technologies, and some fears, again, like you're saying, some fears that they had initially and how they overcame them, and how that actually is working for them in their lives, incorporating their families as well, staff, and those kind of things, just to make their life much easier. And also to sustain their living situations. We really have some great success stories, so I'm really excited to see what comes of that. Also, for the website, there was a question, or people were hoping to get a list of definitions for the acronyms, because it's acronym world at DDS, and it will be helpful if individuals and families are able to be able to decipher what those acronyms are when they get on the website, or if they're reading any document, they can kind of follow along. And I believe that was it. You did mention about the newsletter coming out, and we talked about communication going to DDS staff more frequently, and also about for including information that we feel like they need to know ahead of time, like things coming down the pike that we want case managers and resource managers and folks to be aware of, so that they are able to respond and be prepared to respond, and give those answers ahead of time. So that was one of the things that we did identify was necessary. And I did talk to Wayne too a little bit about that as well. And we discussed some things that I'll be sharing with you too, Maura, as far as how we can help on that front. But I don't have, that's all I had to add. I don't know if anyone had any other questions for Maura pertaining to our communication planning moving forward. Some good things coming down the pike.
And Princess, this is Maura Fitzgerald from McDowell Communications Group. Just one thing to add on the newsletters. The first, at least probably 2 newsletters that we put out that are going to go to everyone, we need to, for the individuals and families, we need to mail those out. So because DDS, I guess, doesn't have a very good email list for individuals and families. So that is, it's a very expensive and more time-consuming process to mail out these newsletters. So one of the things that we are really hoping to push in the initial few newsletters, and hopefully push through DDS staff as well, is trying to collect email addresses from individuals and families. So hopefully we can get a fulsome list and transition to being able to send the newsletters out electronically rather than through the mail, because it's extremely expensive. So maybe we can talk about how we might be able to work that with case managers, or I don't know what the what the rules are on that and that sort of thing, but
It's Princess here.
It.
Yes, Princess here, DDS. Wayne can speak to this, but we did have there were several occasions, I remember anyway, as a case manager, where we had to go through our caseloads and get our emails and ways of communication from our individuals and families updated in our e-camera system. So that's something that we've done. Obviously, that information changes, and they no longer become, they're no longer up to date, and they change for whatever reason. But that's something that we definitely are looking at, making sure that we do. I thought that when we were talking, that you had mentioned something about some sort of sign up for individuals and families outside as well, so that way we can build a system that has their email communication as well.
Yes, yeah, this is Maura Fitzgerald from McDowell. There is a place on the website, on the DDS main page, for people to sign up and give their emails so that they can get updates. So that's where we're going to be pushing people to give their email addresses, and hopefully build the list that way. But I have a feeling that it's probably going to be a process that needs to be tackled from a few different angles. But we're definitely going to be, advocating for people to sign up through the DDS website when we send out those first few newsletters.
All right, thanks. And we have Wayne with his hand up, and then Maria.
Yes, thank you, appreciate it. Yep, so I think there are some strategies that we're talking through now to ensure that that any mailings that go out are done to good addresses, and that are intended and directed to intended audiences and everything else. So we'll continue to work through those strategies and try to make the most out of those efforts. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, thank you for your update. A lot of great things that I'm hearing there. One thing that I think will be really important, and I know there's another group that works on family communications, and I know that there is some, that we're reviewing those minutes, they're reviewing ours. There's some of that connection between the two, but I think it's really important And we're doing this to a degree, but just to continue to remember that prior to any of those family communications, that we are internally communicating what's going to be going out, including the upcoming newsletters, so that case managers and other staff are prepared, well prepared and informed as to the why, the who, what, where, when, why we're doing what we're doing. So just wanted to always throw that in there when I have a chance to. So.
Yes, and just so everyone knows too, we're going to be putting together some communication to make sure we get that out to DDS staff so that they are aware of the same updates we are made aware of here as well. So they know that what's coming down the pike as far as developments and things like that. So thanks, Wayne. And Marina has her hand up.
Yeah, hey, Marina Durman, parent. So just a technology question. It occurs to me that when you were talking about the emailing out, there is a whole generation who doesn't use email. And that generation is now growing to the age where they could be some of the family, the parents. I mean, they're not, it used to be like kids these days. And now those kids are 30 or getting into the, older. So I'm wondering, are you thinking about going beyond email into, text messaging as your mechanism, as an option, or something else?
Well, this is Maura Fitzgerald from McDowell Communications Group. Oh, and Kevin has his hand up, so I'll actually toss it to him because he would probably have a better answer for that than I would.
Kevin Bronson, DDS. So, yeah, actually, so it's a bigger problem than just all of that. I think it's not. What I've learned is that we look at the generation that we assume that probably doesn't do email, and it's shockingly not that. I joke is, in my case, my grandmother is very good at using the email and using a computer. My mom, not so much, right? So, but that's could be just a very big fluke, right? So there's a variety of different stuff. So I think the idea, to your point though, is to literally try to get everyone in every place. Text messaging is not necessarily the best way. And I only say that because it's hard to identify if the phone number is a cell phone or not a cell phone, and our database doesn't have that information. So, and I don't see, it's a good idea. It's just that I don't see it happening in the next year. Just
yeah, no, I was
open and honest.
There are people. No. There are people.
Yeah.
I know that you wouldn't just blast two people's phone numbers unless they had said that is what I would respond to. Because I know there's lots of people who would say, yeah, I haven't read an email in, in 10 years because I never read my emails. And that's what we, for a long time, said about the kids. Now those kids are growing up into being, again, potentially the age of the responsible family members that you might be wanting to get a hold of. So might you want to give that as an option for people to say, no, please text me. This is my cell phone. Anyway.
Yeah, no, Kevin Bronson, DDS. I saw Wayne jump in. The reason why, and I'll let Wayne comment on this, is because I think this could be a database issue, like one of those sort of things where like the database was created before email was really a thing, right? So now we use like a blank field, and we just use blank field as that's the, so
Right.
I'm not, I don't really know. So Wayne, do you want to chime in?
Wayne from DDS. No, thanks, Marina. I appreciate your points because it's so true. I work outside of this with younger people, and I'm sending them information via email all the time, and they're like, "Wow, we don't really check email," So it's true, and I think there are ways. Yeah, to Kevin's point, our current systems are not set up that way, but Kevin, you've got some cool new initiatives on our website to allow people to put their preferred contact in, and email, and could there be an extra box added on for cell phone if that's somebody's preference. So I think there are definitely some things to explore there, especially moving forward into the future. It's something we should keep in mind.
Princess here, just even to gather that information, even if it's not feasible to do anything with it right now for the next year, which I think is also something important to consider. We want to look at what we can do now to get people informed right now. But maybe to have that extra checkbox there so that we are starting to gather cell phone numbers if folks have cell phone numbers, and to gather, gauge if this is, a method of communication that people are actually interested in.
And Kevin Bronson, DS, sorry, Maura. I think the one thing just to remind everyone too is the data is only as good as the data that we put in, right? So, we had a meeting, or we didn't have a meeting the last time, and I don't remember who it was, but we found out from a parent that come to find out your address in our database was incorrect, and it has been incorrect for a couple of years. But it's just one of those sort of things where, it's how would you know, right? It's that struggle. So it's just making sure that everything's up to date, regardless of what it is, cell phone or not. So.
And this is Maura Fitzgerald from McDowell Communications Group. I just wanted to say to the issue of texting. It's a larger state government issue than just DDS. I work with another state agency, and they are in the process of working with like an outside technology nonprofit group to do a pilot program to like a very small segment of the population that state agency serves, to see if they can do text messaging and how it will work and whatnot. So there's a lot of broader questions that state government as a whole kind of needs to figure out before texting can really become like a mass use thing across the different agencies. But it's something that's being worked on, but probably not something that's going to be readily available in the next, year or more.
Okay. All right, so there's some work to be done there with the communication front, and certainly Wayne will be talking to you. We'll be in discussion about what strategies are going to be in place for DDS staff for getting that information updated. I think that's important. Case managers being at the forefront here of contact with individuals and families, that's a good place to start. If no one else has any comments, oh, it says Don's hand's actually up. Don, and then we'll go to a future agenda items. I know we're well past time, and I know folks have other meetings.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just one quick response into that. A lot of this data is collected when we are doing our IPs with our case managers. It's all on there. So, those are done. I know I do a 6-month and then an annual. So the most updated information would be on those forms. So that may be a way for the case managers to gather that information and maybe update the system, but we are asked to update that each and every IP.
This is Princess here. Yes, folks are asked to update that. The difference is there are individuals that I know for me that move and they don't let me know, phone numbers change and we don't know. There's things that happen for many different reasons to where the information is updated, but it's no longer accurate. And so, also too, there's semi-annual meetings for some, and paper review semi-annuals for others. So we do have the mechanism for which we do gather that information and try to keep it updated as much as possible. But I think in an effort for this initiative and for these purposes, it makes sense to definitely go back and make sure that that's a strategy that we're reaching out to case managers and staff now to get that information updated. Even for providers, we do the same thing to make sure that we have their email communication and those kind of things. So it's just a constant, constant communication that we make sure we try to keep up to date.
Yep. So Dawn DiMatteo, parent here. I actually had that situation where my move on survey went to an address that I haven't lived there for 2.5 years, but I've always, updating the address and phone numbers and emails and cell phone on my IP. So, that might be something that needs to be addressed too, as each case manager does go out and get that information just to confirm it quickly in the database so that once we have the database updated, it stays that way and we're not in the situation, 3 to 5 years from now again.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Dawn. So if no one else has any other questions, we can move on to any future agenda items, which we already have a pretty good list of things that we need to follow up on for sure. But any future agenda items you guys want to bring up for discussion at the next meeting, we can talk about that now, and just wanted to announce that the next meeting is Wednesday, February 8th at 11 o'clock. Any future agenda items?
Kevin Bronson, DDS, I would suggest probably planning or looking into what the next steps would be for phase 2 and what staff should be prepared for and what DDS should be communicating prior to that phase 2 March whatever deadline. I don't know, Peter, if that sounds like what we should be doing or not.
I think that makes sense. I think we probably should have Deloitte come and give a little update in terms of where they are at and what phase 2 would look like. So this committee would have an idea of that.
Princess here, that would be great. That would be helpful for me for sure to have Deloitte come and give us an update where they are and what's to come.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else?
I see Dawn's hands up. I don't know if that's from before.
Dawn, is your hand still up from before?
No,
or-
it's not. It's not. That's bad. My bad.
Oh, okay. And Wayne and I will we'll touch base too on our efforts pertaining to getting case managers some information and kind of letting them know that we need some updates on individual and families communication in the system. Wayne, that's something we can touch base on.
Okay, will do. I mean, we absolutely have some there's other efforts going on, and I've got some other ideas sparked from today's conversation that perhaps we can talk about offline, but really also update everybody as far as other efforts at our next meeting. So I think that's a good idea. I mean, even just the how do we have more regional based discussions around that. I think that's a follow-up item that we have to address before coming together in 2 weeks.